Cool. All right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where in the world you happen to be. My name is Christopher Harrison. I'm a senior program manager inside of Microsoft, inside of cloud and AI, inside of academic ecosystems, inside of something else, and there's probably 5 other departments that I left off as well that are in that chain. But anyway, I am super excited to be here this morning for me out here in Pacific time. I'm going to say hi to everybody in a second. It's so fantastic to see chat already alive. That always makes me very happy. So I'm going to say hi to chat here in just a moment. But I do want to introduce the show here real quick. So this is Code and Coffee, which is an exploration of dev. So one big thing that I want to highlight before we go anywhere else, and I'll say this again as well, that everything that you're about to see today is actually done live. And in fact, there's going to be a few things that I actually haven't done before this morning. So it will actually be a little bit of a learning experience for all of us. And that really is sort of the goal here, is to learn together, because after all, as developers, there's an awful lot that we're constantly having to assimilate. There's an awful lot that we constantly have to pick up. And so I really want this show to be about that experience. So let's see how we can do that. So I'm going to be a real developer here, trying to do like sort of real things with, in this case, React. And let's get in and explore. So you're going to notice mistakes. You're going to notice I'll be bringing up docs and so forth and so on. The other big thing that I want to make sure that I highlight here is this is also very chat driven. So if you have questions, please ask them. That's a big part of what makes this happen, about kind of what makes this show special, I think, is that chat experience. So please say hi, ask questions otherwise I feel kind of lonely. Otherwise it's just, me typing on a keyboard and that's it. And so definitely say hi, interact. That's what this is all about. So there's so many people to say good morning to. It's so fantastic. So Mallory is hanging out in the background. She is basically the person who keeps me sane and keeps all of this pointed in the right direction. So hello to Mallory, hello to Sammy, to Kevin, to James, to Ruchi, to TXH. I'm curious if that's like Houston, Texas, or if there's something else that's there. Good morning to John. Good morning to Andres. Good morning to Sam, to Gaston, to John Patrick, to Ruchi, to Ingrid, to Vitatus. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that name. To Hamad, to Azara, to Vishnu, and to Miriam, and to MM, and to Marcus, and to Yossi. To Bajoy, to Med, to Otto, Metrium. Boy, this is fantastic. Good morning to Morocco, to Israel. I got to go to Israel actually about a year ago today. I got to spend a few days out in Tel Aviv. I definitely enjoyed it. Definitely want to go back. And hello to the Philippines. Abdul Rahman, to Shira. Real deal. Hey, good to see you back. Brandon. I'm laughing. So Brandon is a friend of mine. We used to work together at a different organization. We were famous for poking at one another. So I hope he'll take it easy on me today. But good morning, Brandon. It's always good to see you, virtually or otherwise. So C# is still superior. No. It's all about TypeScript. It's all about TypeScript. But anyway, so, good morning to Kevin, good morning to Gavin, good morning to Yossi. So many people, this morning. It's so fantastic. That definitely brings me joy here. I'm going to get a real quick, sip of coffee. I'll give you a chugga 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 as well there, Brandon. I'm sure that will. I'm sure that'll be coming up. So it's good to see you, man. I hope that life is okay. I hope that that CSC is still treating you well. So cool. All right. Well, welcome to everybody. It's so fantastic to see everybody here. So let's sort of get into it here. So here is basically the layout. Oh, I need to update this real quick here. Give me 1 second here, and put in the correct GitHub repository that we're going to be using, and let me throw that into chat there as well. So cool, excellent. That's good to hear. Real deal. Beautiful. I love it. All right, there we go. Okay, so again, for anybody who's new here, basically up above my head, those are going to be the text that we'll be using, and also the stream goals here. So this is a brand new project that we're going to be building with a technology that I'm sort of familiar with, but not overly familiar with. So it will definitely be an exploration. And again, that's what all of this is about, is let's get in, let's explore. I'm not a React expert. I don't pretend to be a React expert. I sort of know how to do a few things, and so we'll get in and we'll explore. So I'm going to be building a site with that. We'll display some data, create our initial layout, and we'll deploy this out to Azure Static Web Apps. And as always, we will be debugging things. So with that, let's talk a little bit about React. So React is still the most popular front-end framework, or front-end JavaScript framework. It's great because you can actually build all sorts of types of applications with React. So you can absolutely build out web-based projects, which of course is what we're going to do. But you can also use a little thing called React Native, where you can actually create like mobile apps and desktop apps and things like that, all by using React. And there certainly are other frameworks that are out there. In fact, we did a whole series where we were talking about Vue in the past that you can go in and check out. You've still got Angular. Svelte is up and coming, but React is still the most popular. And I think in a lot of ways, it's also kind of the first big one here. That there was a lot of other frameworks that came along, but React seems to be, whenever anybody thinks about a JavaScript front end, they think about React. So Hamad asks a great question. So what about jQuery? So jQuery was certainly the first big popular JavaScript library. And without jQuery, we would not have the internet as it stands today, or we wouldn't have web development as it stands today, for all the good and for all the bad. And I know that there are some people that like to kind of beat up on jQuery, like, Abdul Rama mentions, I think jQuery is old, and it certainly is, and it certainly can be a little bit bloated and a little bit slow. And there's a lot of jQuery functionality that's now just built into JavaScript. So in a lot of ways, the need for jQuery has lessened. I'm not going to say it's gone away, but it certainly has lessened. But the big thing about jQuery, and where we're going to differentiate jQuery from React, is that jQuery is just a library. And I shouldn't say just a library, but it's a library. It's not a full framework. So what jQuery was, or is it's a collection of helper utilities. So jQuery was designed to make it easier to do all of the different things that were not as simple as they should have been in JavaScript. So doing things like setting classes on HTML elements was a little bit tricky. Finding items inside of the DOM was a little bit tricky. And so jQuery really simplified all of that. And it used or relied on very heavily that CSS syntax as well. So it made it relatively natural for web developers to take to jQuery and to start doing their thing. So it was really a revolutionary library, and it was great. But again, it was a library. And so it was then still your responsibility to build out things from there. And I would contrast that with something like React, or again, Vue and all of the other front-end frameworks, is that these frameworks are more robust. So that React is much more focused on how can we display data and how can we allow the user to then interact with data. So John Patrick, makes a great point here that jQuery is more focused around DOM manipulation, and that's certainly true, whereas React and Vue and all of the other frameworks, sometimes known as MVVM frameworks, are really geared around managing state and around managing data and around data binding and making it easier for me to, again, display that data, take input from the user and be able to manipulate that data. So that's really the core difference there. And so React was really, I think, the first big one that popped here. And there's certainly a lot of others that preceded it. Knockout preceded React, which was a huge favorite of mine. And even though React has certainly been around for a while, it absolutely is the one that people typically think of first when they're thinking about that front-end MVVM framework. Now, there's a lot of different things that make React special, that make React unique, and we'll get to those in a second here. Abdul Rama says, DOM manipulation is now built in with JavaScript, and in a lot of ways that is true. That there are still certain things when it comes to manipulating the DOM that aren't necessarily as easy as we might hope inside of JavaScript, but a lot of what jQuery does has now been baked into vanilla JS, which is fantastic. John Patrick asked the question, what do I think about EJS? I'm going to be honest, I don't have an opinion because I have not yet played with it. So so no opinion there. So React makes things a little bit different. So React is, to a certain extent, kind of opinionated in how things should be laid out. And that's not necessarily a bad thing for frameworks to have opinions. But it does mean that when you get in and you start doing your development, that you need to keep that in mind. And so React does a couple of very big things. Number one, as we're going to see probably a little bit later, we probably won't get into it a whole lot today, but maybe in a future episode. But state winds up becoming immutable, meaning that you're not allowed to change state values, which if you've never programmed in that environment can be a real tricky thing to start to get into. And so as a result, React does have a little bit of a reputation for being a little bit difficult to get into because of that fact, because it does require a little bit of a change in thought. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, again, in a future episode. But the other very big thing that React does is demonstrated right here. Will you zoom in for me? There we go. Let's make that nice and big. Perfect. Is this thing right here, which is JSX. Now, it does say that JSX is optional and is not required to use in React. which I think is a little bit funny, only because if you decide not to use JSX, you're giving away one of the biggest features of React, and I think it would be very difficult to do a whole lot in React without using JSX. So JSX is technically optional, but you're going to find yourself using JSX, which then begs the question, what is JSX? So JSX is JavaScript XML is the full full name for it. And what this allows you to do is not required if you hate yourself to a certain extent. So JSX is effectively JavaScript and XML all combined together. And so what you're going to notice is that you're able to intermingle all of your HTML and your JavaScript together inside of one file. And if you're an old like I am, this is something that takes a mental change here, a mental shift, because for years and years and years and years and years, we've always been taught to keep your display separate from your code. And so now with something like JSX, you're going to intermingle your display and your code. And in the end, this actually does become a bit more natural, because if we think about our display is never static. Our display is always going to be based on something. It's going to be based on some data values. It's going to be based on something changing. It's going to be based on some Boolean logic. That there's always going to be some level of code that's going to be required to make our display in the shape that we're looking for. So intermingling those two actually is a more natural way to program, even if it might be different than what you've done in the past. Now you are going to notice that it's not called JSH or JSHTML, that it is called JSX, and that X stands for XML. And if you're not familiar with XML, XML is a markup language that is based on the syntax of HTML. And it has a couple of additional rules that HTML does not have. So like one very big thing you'll notice is that, let me go in and get rid of this. You'll notice that I just generated an error message here, that with XML, you need to like close out all of your tags. And so that's the error message that I'm getting here, that I don't have a closing div tag. If I'm doing just HTML, that would actually work just fine. But because of the fact that this is doing XML, I need to have that closing tag. Another thing that you're going to notice, oh, I can't do tab there. Close that out. Another thing that you're going to notice is that everything needs to be contained inside of one element. Now, the reason that these rules exist for XML is to try and overcome some of the challenges with HTML, that HTML is relatively like, loosey-goosey. It allows you to do things that oftentimes aren't technically allowed. And the reason for that is really a vestige of the old browser wars, where different browsers supported different tags. And as a result, they both started, both major browsers, Netscape and Internet Explorer, started doing this thing where they would basically just make a best effort. So if the HTML wasn't perfectly formed, it would still go ahead and try and figure out how to best display it just contextually and go, oh, okay, I think this is what the developer actually meant. XML doesn't do that. it requires that everything be in a specific format. And the advantage to that is it makes it easier to then parse. And so that's why here it's going to be XML, because if we are going to combine our JavaScript and our display together, we need to be able to easily understand what the HTML is trying to do. And so that's why we have those additional rules. That's why it does apply those XML rules here. So you are going to notice a couple of little things there, that everything will need to be contained inside of one root element, that your tags always need to be closed to display properly, and so forth and so on. So you do need all of those different things in place. So that's where we're going to wind up kind of building towards and seeing here. But this is what JSX is all about. Okay. Now, the last little thing that I'm going to say about JSX, and then we're going to start getting in and building out our project and writing a bit of code, which is, I think, what everybody is here for, is JSX is not understood by a browser. That JSX has to be converted into JavaScript and HTML and all of those other things, so that there needs to be some level of conversion into that JavaScript. Now, if you use the React command line, it can do that for you. You could also go in and use Webpack to do that for you as well. Now, I'll openly admit, I don't know Webpack, because, I don't know, I have this funny thing where I don't want to write more code just to make my code work. So Webpack, to me, I struggle with the concept. I know at some point I'm going to need to learn it. I know that I'm not going to be able to put this off forever. But again, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but having to write code just to get my code to emit properly just seems a little bit weird. So as a result, I don't use Webpack or any of those bundling tools where you have to write code to make it work. But instead, I use snowpack, which is also similar to like Parcel. That the big thing that these tools will do is they will do that generation for you automatically. So that way I don't have to write code to get my code to generate. Again, because I think that's a little bit weird to have to do. Maybe that's just me. I don't know. Okay. Anyway. Cool. That's a good size. Okay. Let's get in and let's start writing some code here and start putting all of this together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let's just bring up the tutorial page here and let's get my installation. There we go. Okay, why can I not find the page that I want right away? I want, in the tutorial, before we start, yada, 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 what are we building? Prerequisites. I want, maybe just too zoomed in. Just looking for, oh, that's funny. Okay, that's fine. I'll just do it. I was hoping to bring up the install page here real quick, but I cannot find it. There we go. Create a new React app. That was the page that I wanted. Okay, so you can go in and do create React app to create a brand new React application. And so you'll notice that in the doc here, and I'll paste this in real quick here. I don't care about the Gatsby. There we go. Okay. So what you'll notice is that if you want to create a brand new React application, that you can use create React app. And you'll notice that the way that they're going to run this is by using npx. And if you're not familiar with npx, npx is relatively new. It allows you to actually run packages without having to install them locally, which is great for utilities like Create React App. Now, there's a lot of people that really like Create React App. I'm not one of them. And the reason that I don't like Create React App is because it gives me this template where I find myself just ripping everything out and starting all over again anyway. So for me personally, I like to just start from scratch instead, and go that route. So rather than doing the npx route, I always just do it up manually and do it that way. So you can use Create React App, or you can just go in and do npm install, and it's still not on that page, but that's all right. So let me come over here and let's say npm install React and React DOM, and we'll just hit enter. Okay. So this will now give me the two main dependencies that I'm going to need to make my application work. So it's going to be React and the React DOM. So React, of course, is going to be that core library. React DOM, as we're going to see, is going to give me the ability to take whatever it is that I'm doing inside my JSX, whatever it is that I'm doing inside of my React, and put that onto the page. So that's what those two libraries are going to do for me. And again, we'll see those as we go forward. The other utility that we're going to use here again is snowpack. So you'll see npm install snowpack, and I'm actually going to do this as a dev dependency. So we'll say npm install save dev and then snowpack. Now, what snowpack again is going to do for us is it will take our npx and eventually our TypeScript, and it will convert that into the appropriate JavaScript for us. So I'm going to go ahead and just set that up as a dev dependency. It's not going to be needed for production, because of the fact that, again, snowpack's responsibility is to create our JavaScript for us. So that's what snowpack is going to do there. Now, what you'll also notice with snowpack is the fact that there's a dev server that it will give to us, and it will do that great thing of automatically detecting pages, automatically refreshing things, and so forth and so on. So it does an awful lot of really cool things for us. So I'm just going to make my life a little bit easier here and just copy and paste that right into my package.json file. There we go. Cool. All right. Let's go ahead. Let me make sure that I've got all of that looking good. Okay, cool. All right. So let's go ahead and save that. So now I've got that set up there. Now, I did mention that snowpack does some things for you automatically, and that is true. But we do need to get one little config file created here just to tell snowpack a little bit about what it is that we're doing here. So what we're going to do is we're going to mount a couple of directories. So I'm going to start just very basic here with public. So this is going to store out all of our core pages. And so I'm going to tell snowpack, hey, look inside the public folder and make that available onto the root of the dev server that you create. All right. So I know that that was a little bit of setup work. I know that that was a little bit of talk. I hope I haven't bored everybody to death out there. But that's just the initial, just like little bit of getting started stuff. So now we can actually get in and start doing a bit of code here. Quick sip of coffee. There we go. Okay, so let's create our public folder. Is anybody still out there? Did I bore everybody to death here? I hope not. Okay. Maybe I did. All right. So one really neat built-in utility inside of Visual Studio Code is all of these different emet abbreviations that will generate some core code automatically for you. So this is going to generate my bit of HTML5 here for me. And I'm just going to set up my title as Recipe Manager. Okay. Glad to see that people are still alive and are still out there. That's good to know. That's good to know. Okay. So let's go ahead and H1 here, and let's say Recipe Manager, and let's go ahead and say div and ID equals app. Okay, so this HTML file here, I'm glad to see that that people are still out there. Good, good, good. So this little HTML page, this will be probably all that I'm going to wind up adding to this HTML page, with the exception of a call to a script tag, which I'll add in just a minute. So what you're going to notice is I've got my little H1 up top, and that's of course just to display out my little title here of Recipe Manager. And then what you're going to notice is this div tag right here. So this div tag is eventually going to become the host for my React application. So eventually the JavaScript and HTML and everything else that's going to be emitted by my React app will wind up inside of there. Now I do need to point to my script tag. So let's go ahead and say script, and I'm going to say src equals, and I'm going to say dist index.js, even though that that doesn't exist. And let's set my type to module as well. Okay. So I know I haven't created this yet. We'll get to that in just a moment. But this is eventually going to become the JavaScript that will be emitted by snowpack and by React. So this is now what we're going to import in. So now I've got my core HTML page. Cool, cool, cool. I'm going to tell snowpack then to go look inside my source directory and make that available inside of dist. So notice what we're doing here. Move that over here. Is we're going to tell our HTML file, hey, go look inside the dist folder for the JavaScript. And what we're doing over here is we're telling snowpack, hey, when you generate your JavaScript files, put them inside of a folder called dist, short for distribution. And we're going to store all of our JSX files and everything else inside of a folder called src. So inside of a folder called source. All right, let's move that over there. And let's go ahead and create that src folder. And now let's go ahead and say index.js here. Okay, so this is going to be, actually, let's create this as a TypeScript file. Now, fair warning, this is this is literally the first time that I'm doing this with TypeScript. So one of the things about the spirit of this show, the spirit of Code and Coffee, is I do things live, and I do things that I haven't necessarily tried elsewhere. So as a result, I'm flying completely without a safety net here. This might fail. This might go horribly wrong. So keep that in mind. Things might wind up going completely sideways as we go through this. So it will be an adventure. We will all learn together. So do keep that in mind as we go through this. That things may break, that things may go sideways. Because again, this is part of the life of a developer, is getting in and playing with things and trying things and having things go wrong. That's what this show is all about. All right. So let's go ahead and import React from React. That looks good. Import React DOM from React DOM. Cool. And why are you giving me red squigglies there? Can't find module. That's weird. Did I not? Oh, okay. I know what that error message is. Cool. All right. So, let's talk a real quick bit about TypeScript. So, for those of you that are not familiar with TypeScript, TypeScript is a superset of JavaScript. I like to think of it as the next version of C#. I'm totally kidding. I'm just saying that because I know Brandon is out there and I'm just trying to poke at him. But TypeScript is a superset of JavaScript. And what TypeScript does is it helps overcome some of the shortcomings and challenges that we typically have when we're working with JavaScript. And one of the biggest things is TypeScript has a strong type system that will automatically define all of the different components and objects and so forth that are available inside of a library. And the way that it does this is by using type definition files. Now, some libraries will have those type definition files already built in, and some won't. And so that's what it's telling me here. If you notice, and I'm not going to be able, yeah, I can. If you notice right here, cannot find module React DOM or its corresponding type declarations. That's what it's looking for. TypeScript is going, hey, I know that there's a library here, but I don't know how to use it. So that's the error message that it's giving me here. It doesn't know how to use it. So I need to go ahead and install those types. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. I like Kevin. It would be weird if it worked the first time. Agreed. So that's that's the developer life right there. I'd be surprised if it worked the first time. Okay. So I'm going to say npm install, and this is a dev dependency here. So I'm going to say save dev at types React DOM. I don't know why it's going over to why it's not putting in a carriage return, but that's all right. So what, where are my React DOM types? That's weird. Why are you not installing? Did you chugga? Oh, I think I might need. Oh, okay. React dash DOM. Well, that's only slightly annoying. Okay, that's what I did wrong. That's only slightly annoying. I want Give me 2 seconds here. Talk amongst yourselves. I will give you a topic. The Industrial Revolution was neither industrial nor a revolution. Discuss. Okay. That installed. I don't know why you didn't update in here, but that's okay. Oh, because I didn't save that. Don't save. I want package.json. There we go. That looks a little bit better. Okay. So now let's come back over here. And now there we go. That looks so much better. Okay, cool. So now we got rid of the error message. I was just installing the wrong library. See, I told you. Really cooking here. All right. So now let's go ahead and use that React DOM dot. And now what we're going to do is we're going to tell this to render. So render is the core function inside of React that will generate the appropriate HTML and everything else that needs to be displayed out. So what render is going to look for here is it's going to look for the HTML that you want to display, so the template first, and then where we want to display it. So I'm going to go with sort of the classic here is I'm going to say div, and I'm going to say hello world. We'll make this official. And then the next parameter here is going to be document, get element by ID, and our ID is app. Cool. So now let's put this side by side here. Go over there. There we go. And cool. So what you're going to notice, let's see, will this, maybe I zoom out just a touch. There we go. So what you're going to notice is right here, I've got my get element by ID. I've got my app over there. I can actually, do I not have zoom it downloaded? I want downloads. I don't have zoom it. Oh. If you're not familiar with Zoom It is probably my favorite presentation tool. It allows you to draw on your screen and do all sorts of other just like really cool things when you're doing presentations. It's absolutely fantastic. So it allows me to do things like this. So there we go. So now you'll notice that wire up right there. So what's going to happen is it's going to take this little hello world, and it's going to put that now right inside of that div tag. So that's what's going to wind up happening. That is now the core of our app. All right. So now let's go ahead and do this. npm run dev. Is that what we called it? I have a great memory. It's just really short. Run start. Let this build. Voila. Cool. It works. Look at that. So now what we've got is we've got our little recipe manager. Of course, that was hard coded in. And now we've got our hello world. And that is the bit of text that's now being displayed from our React. Now, one very big thing that I do want to highlight here is, once again, this is going to generate JavaScript. So TypeScript is going to compile down into JavaScript. TSX files or JSX files are going to compile down into JavaScript. So that's what's being emitted here is JavaScript. And so we can actually see that. Exactly, Stephen. Voila. Is if I go to dist index.js, here is the JavaScript that's now being executed. Let me paste this into code here, just to make this a little bit easier to read, so that way we get the color coding. Bloop. Okay. Sound effects help, by the way. If you're not making sound effects when you're writing code, then, you know, what are we doing here? All right. Okay. So there is the there's the JavaScript that's been created here. So it took what we had and it generated this. And this is always, always, always what it's going to be doing behind the scenes when it takes our JSX or our TSX files and emits them. It's always going to be generating this. And so you'll notice that it's using the React library here to create element. But, you know, in reality, we could actually just do that with document and create an element that way. And so you'll notice that it's creating a div, and you'll notice that it's passing in this bit of string here of that hello world. And that's now what it's going to be putting inside of there. And it's going to be putting that, again, inside of that element that's been ID'd as app. So this is what's being generated here. One of the things that I really like to say whenever I'm talking about anything that's developer related, anything that's framework related, is that there's no magic. There is no magic here. That, again, all that this is doing is it's just generating this bit of JavaScript for us right here. That's what's happening, is it's generating that bit of JavaScript. Okay, cool. All right. So we're moving along here. We're actually doing pretty well. We've actually got now our initial setup here, and all of that is looking pretty good. Okay. So let's keep building. Let's keep moving from here. So when you're working in React, we mentioned already the fact that we're going to be using JSX files. Or in our case, we're going to be using TSX files because of the fact that, again, we're doing this in TypeScript. Although, honestly, everything that we've done up until this point could still be done with JavaScript. That all of this would actually be just fine as JavaScript as well. So that's the first big thing that we get from React. But the other big thing that we get from React here is we get the ability to create our own components. And a component at the end of the day is basically like creating your own custom cool HTML tag. So imagine, if you will, that we could create our own custom HTML tags for, say, displaying out a calendar or displaying out like modal dialog boxes or any of those types of things. And anybody who's done maybe like ASP.NET web forms in the past, or maybe if you're going, you know, really far back, if you're doing if you've done ColdFusion in the past, that was a lot of what those frameworks did. And granted, you know, they of course ran on the server, but what they were doing is they were introducing tags that aren't available inside of HTML. And what's great is what's great about about having those tags is that they now become reusable. And they now become easier to understand as the developer, because if I create a tag and I just call it calendar, or I just call it modal, well, Now I know exactly what it's going to display there, that I don't have to go sifting through a whole bunch of classes to try and figure out what it is that it's going to be doing, that I know it's just going to do a calendar or whatever it happens to be there. Stefan asked the question, how many people have left sidebar on the right? Oh, this thing. Yeah. So, this little sidebar here, and I can never remember what that thing is called here. I want preferences, settings. I can never remember what it's called. Oh yeah, the workbench. That's what this thing over here is called. So by default, the workbench is, or maybe it's not the workbench. What is that thing called? There we go. Yeah, the workbench sidebar. That's what this thing is called. Everybody really wishes they were in Visual Studio. Yeah. Okay, Brandon. So this little workbench here is, of course, where you're getting your search and your Git items and all of your other little things that you've got here. And so you can have that over here on the left, which is the default, or you can have it over here on the right, which is where I have it. Now, the reason that I put this over here on the right is this. Let me bring up my my HTML file here. So what you're going to notice is everything is, nice, all hunky-dory sitting here on the left side. And as I toggle this little thing on and off, which I do constantly, toggling that little thing on and off, what you're going to notice is that all of my text stays right here. It doesn't move. It stays right here. However, if that thing is over on the right side, let's go back over here to preferences, settings, workbench. Where's that option again? I had it 2 seconds ago. Why can I not find it? Workbench. That's hilarious. I found it in 2 seconds the first time, and now this time I can't find it again. I want... There we go, sidebar. There we go. Okay, so now let's put this back over here on the left. And so now what you're going to notice, here's my code. I'm doing my thing, and oh, now I open it. Now all of a sudden my code shifts over to the right. And now I close it, and now all of a sudden my code shifts over there to the left. And I know that this is something that seems very small, but it makes a big difference because it's now off-putting, that it's now like shifted things. And so now my eyes have to readjust and figure out where everything has moved to. And those little things do eventually wear you down. They do eventually have an impact on you. It's sort of like that thing about making decisions, that the more decisions you have to make in a day, the more tired of making decisions you wind up becoming. And that's true even if it's the little trivial decisions. And it's why, for example, you've seen a lot of people that basically whittle their wardrobe down to like 2 items. And it's not just because maybe of like some level of laziness or anything like that, but it is because, again, having to make those decisions is just yet another decision, and that does start to tire you out after a while. And so having to readjust as your code moves, that wears you down. I know it seems so trivial, but it does in fact make a difference. And so that's why I have that over on the right side there. I'm never going to be able to find this again. Sidebar location. There we go. Move that back over. Perfect. So now that's why I have that over there on the right. So yeah. So I'm glad to see that I got 3 people shifted over to that. So yeah, it makes a big difference. The other big thing that I do the other big thing that I love is this little thing called ligatures, which is part of Fira code. So what you're going to notice is I hit my equal sign 1, 2, 3 times, or I go not equal. And what you'll notice is I'm not getting that classic bang equal, but rather I'm getting the little equal and that /. And those are ligatures. They're characters. And it actually is a little bit easier for your brain to process those than it is the multi-character of that bang equals or that bang double equals. And I especially like this when you're working with like JavaScript, and I'm saying this just for Brandon here, but like when you're working in JavaScript where double equals doesn't actually do equality, you really always need to be using triple equals, and then you're just like staring at your code and you're going, do I have 2 equal signs there? Do I have 3 equal signs there? Having this ligature where now I've got the 3 lines makes a huge difference. And it's funny because again, sort of like having that workbench over on the right side, it's subtle and it doesn't feel like it's making a difference, but it really does. It has just a huge difference on like the mental processing, the ancillary mental processing that goes into doing development work. So yeah, so Fira code as well. So yeah, 2 big things now that we've learned today. We've learned Workbench over on the right side, and then we've also learned about having Fira code and ligatures. So yeah, I'm a big fan of both of those. So yeah, yep, yeah, and Stephen points out, yeah, from the settings page inside of Visual Studio, you go to the text editor, look for font ligatures, and then make sure that is that's checked. So yep. Yeah. Cascadia MS Code Font does support ligatures as well as Brandon points out. I don't know why, but I do still. So this is Fira code, and it's one of those things where I cannot explain why, but it's like a perfect font for my eye. And it's funny because I'm not like a font dork or anything like that. And in fact, when we get a little bit later into like trying to stylize our page and so forth, that you'll notice I'll just go Verdana and just like be done with it as far as the fonts of my page go. But for whatever reason, like Fira code just stands out to me as like a perfect font for code to my eye. So like even like Cascadia code or anything like that, I don't know what it is, but it doesn't feel quite as natural to my eye. It's again, like I can't explain it. It's really funny, but yeah. So I don't know. Yeah. Okay. Anyway. All right. Where were we? That's right. We were talking about creating an app. Okay. So let's do this. So let me create a brand new file here that I'm going to call app.tsx. So Sego felt offended. Yes, exactly. I actually do kind of like Sego as well, but yeah, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. Sego is one of those words I don't know if I'm quite pronouncing it properly. Cool. Tangents. Let me see. What do I want to do? You know what I want to do? I need a break. I want 2 minutes. So let me, give me 2 seconds here. I want, oh, I can't edit that. You know what I can do though? Give me 1 second here. I want, I'm gonna, oh dang it, I can't do it that way. All right, you know what? You're all just going to, I'm just going to go like that. I'm just going to leave that up. You'll just look at my chair. But yeah, I'll be back in just like 1 minute. Okay. Yeah, I'll be back in 2 minutes. I just need a real quick break, and then we'll come back and we'll actually create our app here. So let's go ahead and just do that. Yeah. All right. I'll be back in 2 minutes. There we go. Okay, cool. All right. Time to use StreamYard. You know, I really do like StreamYard. I wish it gave me a little bit more control over a couple of things, but I really do like StreamYard. Yeah, if you finished your first cup of coffee or whatever it is, I want to highlight like my old school mug here. Back, you know, decades ago now, I used to do internet help desk, and so I happened to be around when we first launched DSL at a small company that's now not around anymore. But you know, 50 times faster than 28.8 K modem. So you know, it was 1.4 megabits per second, and it was mind-boggling how fast you could download things. Anyway, okay, cool. All right, let's go ahead and do this. All right. So what I want to do now is I want to create our first true component here. Now, there's a couple of different ways that that we can create components. Yes, blazing fast speeds. So there's a couple of different ways that we can create components. One way is we can create class-based components. And in fact, if you go look at the docs on React, you'll notice that they use class-based components. So you'll notice that they're extending or inheriting from React.component, and then they're putting in their render function right there, and away you go from that. And you can absolutely do that. So you'll notice that you can see that in the docs. Personally, and I find that there's a lot of people that really prefer to do it this way. Personally, I like to do function-based instead of doing class-based. That it just feels a bit more lightweight to me. It feels a little bit more natural to me. And so I like to do class-based instead, or function-based rather. So I'm going to say import React from React. There we go. And let's go ahead and we'll say function app. And let's go ahead and now put in the bit of code that we want. So what you're going to notice is my entire function here is going to consist of one little item here, which is just return. And I can, if I want, I can have other code as needed inside of this function. So if I do need some bit of logic, or I maybe need to go load some data or whatever it is, I can absolutely have that right there. I can put all of that right there. But my return right here is where I'm going to put in the bit of HTML that I'm going to return out. Yeah, Stephen highlights, class-based is .NET guys. Our function-based is maybe the JavaScript. I'm going to say people rather than guys. But yeah, our .NET people versus JavaScript people. I think that there might be some level of truth there, but even still, use the semantics of the language that you're in rather than the semantics that you're most used to. So like back in old days when .NET first came out, one of the things I saw a lot of VB6 developers do is they were writing VB6 code, but just doing it in .NET. But it was really just VB6 code. And that's not what you want to be doing. That you want to use the semantics of the environment that you're in. So you really do want to, for example, if functions are more common in like JavaScript, you really want to do that. It's one of those little things. So yeah. Okay. So return, and this is now where my HTML is going to go. So what I'm going to do for right now is I'm just going to say return, and I'm just going to move my hello world into here. I'm going to make this a little bit more robust in a minute, but I just want to highlight how we can create this component. And now let's go ahead and export default and then our app like that. Okay, cool. Alrighty. So now I've created a function and I've exported that out. And if you look at this, like if I just updated this, let's say that I just did this instead. Let's say I just said return 42, like that. If I look at this code, it looks just like a normal JavaScript module. Like there's nothing that's overly fancy about it, that I've got a function, it's returning a value, and I'm exporting that back. And that's sort of the whole goal here with JSX is instead of doing it that way, I'm now just going to return back HTML. So it's still very much the same thing. It's just instead of returning a value, I'm just going to return back some HTML. And so now what I can do is I can come over here and I can say import app from .wack app. And now what you're going to notice is that I can now use that just like I would a normal tag. And so what it will do, let's move that over here. There we go. Is that little hello world, that's now going to go right inside of here. So I'm now just importing that in, and now I can use that just like any other tag. And I am going to update the word here just to say hello app, just to make it a little bit different so we can prove that it does in fact work here. And so you're going to notice again, I can just pull that in. Now, the little bit of special syntax that you're going to notice is that little / angle bracket at the end. What that's doing is it's self-closing the tag. This is really the way that the cool kids do this, that it's effectively equivalent to me doing it that way, which is just the longer way of me typing it out. Now, the reason that this is required is because, again, this is JSX. The X again stands for XML. And one of the rules about XML, as we highlighted earlier, is that every tag has to be closed. So you need to make sure that you're always closing each tag, even if you're not putting anything inside of it. So that's why we've got that little / right now. Okay. Cool. You know, Brandon highlights something, had a great mentor that says, if it feels like you're fighting the technology, you're doing it wrong. Thank you. Yes, it's a good thing. If you feel like you're fighting the technology, you are doing it wrong. And this is a lesson that I personally have had to learn so many times, that if I go in and I cannot get this to do what I want it to do the way that I want it to do, then you're not using it correctly. You're doing it wrong. Thank you, Brandon. Cool. That made my day. Yeah. So here is my hello app. I'm flustered now. Let me go ahead and bring back up my page. Where am I? Do I not have it up anymore? Did I close it? I think I might have. Okay. What port am I on? I am on port. I can just go like that. Open. There we go. Okay, cool. So now, there we go. So now you're going to notice Recipe Manager and Hello App, and there it is. So now I've got all of that up and running, all looking pretty cool, pretty slick there. So now it's using that app, and I do want to highlight. I can kind of move things around just a little bit here. That if I update this again, that it is in fact pulling that from app.ts. And so this is the normal structure that you'll see inside of an application. Is you'll have that root index file. I'm just moving my windows back around again. There we go. That you'll have that core index file. And basically all that this is going to do is go load everything up, and that your real true entry point becomes this one app folder, or this one app component. And so typically in here then is where I'm going to do things like start setting up whatever state it is that I might be using, or loading whatever data it is that I might need, and starting to do a lot of those things inside of our app here. And again, we're going to build towards that. Remember that this is the whole design here is to build this across multiple weeks. So we will come back and continue to build upon this later. So don't worry, we will get in and we'll talk more about state and doing things like that. So, okay, cool. Let's see, what time have I got? Okay, yeah, I've still got time. I can do this. Let's do this. Let me create a brand new file here. Oh yeah. Stephen, if feel free to ping me on Twitter, or I think you have my email address. Yeah, I'm always happy to come back. So yeah, feel free to reach out. Okay, so let's then take a look at something that is a little bit more robust here. So what we did previously is we created our little app function here, and this is now our component, and it's now displaying out some data. But if what you're doing is you're just doing React to display out hello world, it's probably not the best use of React. So normally you're going to have some level of data that you're going to be working through. So that's what I want to do here is I want to display out some data. So I'm going to create a brand new component. I'm going to say import React from React. And then I'm going to create a function called recipe list. And let's go ahead and say return. And then we're going to return some list. And let's do this as an unordered list like that. Okay. Okay, cool. All right, so when we're talking about JSX, when we're talking about data, what you're going to notice is we're able to, again, integrate our code with our HTML. We're able to integrate our code with our HTML. So let's take something like this. Let's create a real quick list of recipes here. And I'm just going to go with just a string-based array here. So let's just go kind of with a relatively simple array here. So maybe I've got a list for why can I not think of recipes right now? Chicken gumbo, and maybe pork stir fry, and then maybe roast turkey, whatever. Okay, so there's a couple of items there. I don't know why I froze on trying to come up with recipes. There you go, baby back ribs. There you go. I love making ribs in my Instant Pot. It's actually become one of my one of my go-tos. It's so fantastic. Okay. All right. So here's what I want to do. What I want to do is I want to display out all of those items inside of my list. Now, I could, in theory, do this with some sort of a for each or something like that. But that's not really the best way for me to do this. That what I'd rather do instead is convert that into HTML. Now, the way that we can convert an array of items into something else is by using our map function. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say const recipe display. That's a fine name for it. And I'm going to say recipes.map. Now, if you're not familiar with map, what map will do is it will take one item. I'm going to do that sentence again. What map will do is it will effectively act like a for each. It will go through each item in the array and it will convert it into something new. And what it will convert it into is whatever it is that you return back. So you'll notice that on the signature here, it's looking for a callback function. It's looking for a delegate. And because of the fact that I'm using a little bit of TypeScript, it's actually going to notice that, hey, we're going to have a list of strings here. So what it wants is it wants something like this. So I'm going to loop through every single recipe that I have. So that's going to be my recipe. Let me put in my syntax correctly here. There we go. And this recipe is now going to be each one of these strings. So the first time it's going to be chicken gumbo. The next time it's going to be pork stir fry, roast turkey, baby back ribs. So it's going to loop through each item. And now it's going to pass each one in, and it's going to return back whatever it is that I specify here. And again, this is going to be this magic of JSX, is you'll notice that I can now put in HTML right here. That normally what you might do is you might do something like this, is I might say something like name colon and then maybe like $, curly recipe. There we go. And so if I ran this, and I just like did a console log on this, what it would now display out would be name colon chicken gumbo, name colon pork stir fry, name colon yada, 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 the rest of the way down. So that's what it would wind up doing in a normal environment. Well, I'm basically doing that exact same thing here. The only difference is that now I'm going to put this into HTML instead. Yeah, you find it completely wild that you don't have to put in like double quotes or something like that for some form of string interpolation. I agree. And this is something that definitely takes a little bit of getting used to, of doing that JavaScript and that HTML like all together. It certainly is. It's a little bit different. It took me a few hours to kind of get used to it, but once I did, it felt rather natural. So it certainly takes a little bit of adjusting, but your brain does come around to it. Okay. So now what I want to do is I want to put each recipe into it. And this is the other part where it takes a little bit of like kind of brain coming around to it to understand what's going on. All right, let's do this. Actually, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna take a real quick step back. Let's do this. Const message equals variable message. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say yoink message. Okay, let's talk about this syntax for a second. So React, like I think almost all, not all, but almost all HTML templating tools uses this handlebar syntax. It uses the single curly brace. Others use the double, but it's pretty consistent across almost all of them. So you'll notice that we've got both of those curly braces right there. So what this is going to do is it's going to take this message and it's going to display that inside of the div. And so if I save this and I go back over here to my display, you're going to notice variable message. So that's the syntax for displaying a variable inside of a bit of HTML. Now, the big thing to keep in mind is that the moment that you put in HTML, you're now in HTML mode. So I can't just simply say message here. You'll notice the color difference here. The color changes to just white. Because if I just put in message, even though it does match a variable name from up above, what you're going to notice here is that it's just going to be that text of message. So the moment you get into that HTML mode, any text that I put in is just normal text. If I want to read something from code, if I want to read something from a variable message, then I need to use those curly braces. And so now I go back, now it's variable message. So notice that difference there. So the exact same thing then is going to hold true over here on my recipe list. So the moment that I go li here, I'm now in HTML mode. And so if I just simply said recipe, you'll notice my text is white. What this is indicating is that this would now just display out the word recipe. It's not going to use this variable. I'm in HTML mode. So if I want to display what the variable is, then what I need to do instead is I need to use those curly braces. The extra spaces here I'm just putting in for readability's sake. So now you'll notice the color coding. It's that slight cyan there, that kind of light blue. You'll notice my color code change here. So you're going to notice that now this is going to read the name of that recipe. So that's now what's going to wind up happening there. So the moment you go into HTML mode, if you want to then read out some variable, you need the curly braces. So that's what's going on there. Okay. So now let's go back over here real quick to app TSX. Let me put these two side by side so I can do a little bit of a compare and contrast here. And let me scroll that over. Okay, cool. All right. So now let's go ahead and take a real quick look. What you're going to notice is over on the right side here is I've got my message, and that's being displayed out inside my curly. So we've now seen how we can do that. We've seen now the exact same thing up here with recipe. So I created another variable here. I created another variable called recipe display. So what is recipe display? Well, recipe display is now a collection of list items with all of the recipe names. And the reason that it is that is because of this little map function right here. So if I want to display this now what I can do is I can say inside my curly braces, recipe display. Cool. And this is going to be treated just like any other variable. So just like I was able to display out my message, I'm able to display out my recipe display. The only thing that's going to be different here, the only thing that's going to be fancy here, is just the fact that it's now going to be a collection of list items, that it's now just going to be a collection of LIs. Okay. So now let's go ahead and import that in. So let's put this into our app now. So just like before, where inside of my index TSX, I was able to say import app from, I can do the exact same thing here. So I'm going to say import recipe list from .whack recipe list. Boop. And then I can go ahead and now say recipe list like that. All right, and let me just clean that up because I don't need that. Hit save. And so now, if I've done everything correctly, there is my recipe manager here. Pretty slick. And what you'll also notice if I hit F12 here, oh, okay, yeah, I'm getting a little error message here, which I'll get to in a second. I want, there we go. Yeah, so what you'll notice is that each one of those now becomes a list item. I don't want my style. I think I'm just too zoomed in. Here we go. Okay. Yeah. So right here, what you're going to notice is that it's got each of my items here. So it generated all of that. And again, if I go in and I say index.js, whoops, dist, and I want recipe title. No? Oh, sorry, recipe list. There we go. Yeah, so now you'll notice here is that core JavaScript again. So what it's doing is it's now just, it's got its own map right here, and then it's just creating an element based off of that recipe display. So it's just generating that bit of JavaScript to display that automatically for us. So yeah. So Brandon asked this question, definitely slick, but you do have concerns about separation of data and UI. Did we say earlier it's something that you give up or exists in some other way not covered today? So that's a huge question. So a big part of this is going to become part of how you lay out and how you design your application. So one big thing that that I've done here is I've got, all of my recipes just right here. But, I could go in and just like create here. Let me just do this. I'm going to fail on my syntax here. Okay. Okay, so imagine, if you will, that that this is like some really cool high-end API call to go get data or whatever it is. Like, just picture, if you will, that this is what my API call is. So here's my store. So now what I can do is I can say import store from dot whack store, and now there we go. Okay. So something like that. So what you'll notice is that now I've offloaded that. Now I'm going to load that up, and now this is going to display out. And so now let me just make sure that my page is still working here, which I give this about an 80% chance. Yeah, it's still working. Cool. So now, and in fact, let me just kind of prove it. Coffee, just because I need something. Uh-oh, I am getting an error message. Oh, there we go. I just need to refresh my page. There we go. Okay. Yeah. So you'll notice that it is now pulling from there. So you can still go in and implement that. So you can still keep your data separate from your UX. So now, if I go back to my recipe list, the only thing that this is now focused in on is just my data. The other thing that I would highlight is, when you start getting into like handling events and so forth, you can also start to get into Redux, which I'm definitely not going to get into today, which really does then give you that pure separation. That what my UX basically does is it will display my data, and then when somebody like clicks on something or does something, it basically just calls out to the heavens and just says, this happened, somebody do something. And then Redux does some magic where it will then execute some code. I haven't quite put my head around Redux yet, but that's, I think, basically what it does. And it does then give you that better separation there. So yeah. Yeah, and as Erica highlights there, yeah, the data lives on the server normally, and then you just fetch that as you need it. And yeah, you can still go ahead and separate that out. So, okay, cool. All right, let me, I'm just gonna put this back to the way that it was, just because I don't want the extra moving part. Figuring out how to exit zoom it. Hit escape. Okay, cool. All righty. Cool. All right. So I think this is looking good. Yeah, we're displaying out our list of recipes. So let's see here. What have we got? We've created our starter project. So that's done. We've displayed some data. Yeah, we've got sort of an initial layout. I'll want to go back and gussy it up a bit, but we've done that. And then obviously the debug, as always, we definitely did that. So the last thing then that we're missing is the deploy out to Azure Static Web Apps. So let me do two things here. First things first is let me get a gitignore file. For anybody who's not already familiar with gitignore, gitignore is one of my favorite little sites in the world. That what this will do is it will generate a gitignore file for you based on whatever it is that you happen to be doing. So I'm using TypeScript. Typing, yeah, sort of. I'm using JavaScript or Node. Yeah, because I'm doing that. I'm doing, is React in there? It is. Using Visual Studio Code. I've got that. I think that's it. I think those are all the items that it's going to find in here. Yeah, I think that's good. Okay, cool. So I've got all of that. Let me hit create. And voila, there's my gitignore file. So now let me go ahead and grab that. So just a real quick Control A and C. And then let's go ahead and create my gitignore file here. Gitignore.io. And then there we go. Whoops. I don't know why I called it gitignore.io. Let's try it with .gitignore. Let's call it the right thing. That will help. Okay. There we go. All right. Yeah, we've all struggled with exiting out of Zoom. At least we weren't trying to figure out how to exit Vim. Like we're okay there. All right. So now my source control looks much better. Let's go in and just do a global initial commit here, and then just say yes. All right. And let me do a git push. Right, from here, I'm not going to do a PR or anything like that. I'm just going to be a bad developer and just push straight to main. All right, and let me bring up the Azure portal here. Yoink. Chugga, chugga, chugga. All right, so what I want to do is I want to deploy this out to Azure Static Web Apps. If you're not already familiar with Azure Static Web App, Azure Static Web Apps is probably my favorite product that we've released since VS Code, and that's saying something. I love Azure Static Web Apps. That it, what it does is it integrates with GitHub, and it gives you a hosting space for your web applications. Now, the name Static Web Apps, which is a bit of a misnomer, is talking about apps where the majority of your code is going to be running on the client, and the server-side code is going to mostly just be there for support. So just like passing down data and doing authentication and those types of things. So that's what a static web app means. So don't think that this is only ever going to just be HTML and CSS and just client-side JavaScript. It can run server-side components. It will do that through Azure Functions, which is another great little product for doing serverless, and it will give you automatic scale. It will actually give you a content delivery network as well. So it will actually just geo-distribute everything for you, just all right here. And it does this great integration with GitHub as well, as we're going to see. I'm a huge fan of static web apps. Stephen asked if this was released during the Build conference, and yeah, it was. Okay, so what this is going to do is it's going to ask me for a GitHub repository. So let me create a resource here, and I'm going to say static web app. There we go. And I'm going to hit create. And it's going to ask me for my resource group. And this will be my React recipes. There we go. Hit OK. Give it a name, React recipes. Give it a region, West US 2. And then I'll sign into GitHub here. Okay, my organization is Geek Trainer. My repository, what did I call my repository? Recipe Manager. Recipe Manager. There we go. Okay, and now my branch will be main. Okay, so what this is going to do is this is going to actually create a GitHub action file, and it will then pull everything over from there based on the information that I tell it. So the big thing here, and this is honestly where things may wind up failing here, is you need to tell it where all of your items exist. So the two key parts here are the API location, if you're doing any server-side code, and then the output location, which is going to be where any client-side code is going to be. And all of mine is in public. So in theory, I should just be able to say public here, and this will work. Now, you'll notice that I'm hedging my bet here. You'll notice that I'm saying in theory. And the reason that I'm saying in theory is because this can sometimes get a little bit tricky to try and get all of those items set up correctly. And there's actually a very good chance that on the app location, I might have to set this to public, and on the output location, I might have to set this to dist. And the reason for that is my public folder, if we remember, let's come back over here. My public folder contains my my index HTML. So this is the core entry point. And then that dist folder is going to be generated with all of my JavaScript. So I might have to go in and play around with this. This is unfortunately the one sometimes frustrating part of Azure Static Web Apps. It is something that the team is aware of, and they are working to try and resolve. So you might have to just come in and play around a little bit with this. How do I know that dist thing? And all of that is that tribal knowledge, sort of. The settings here do sadly wind up becoming a little bit of tribal knowledge, like a little bit of working with it. There are some custom presets. So if you are using like the React CLI, which I'm not, but if you were using the React CLI, you could just choose that preset here. I'm doing it custom, so it's going to be kind of up to me to figure it out. And sadly, that does just come with a little bit of experience. The reason that I know the dist folder though is because that's what I told snowpack. Is I told it to go with dist. That if I would have set that to like output or built or whatever else, then it would be that. So you'll notice that SRC, this is where my TSX, and then my SRC. So, yep. Yeah. So we're going to see what happens. Yeah, the demo daemon may well show up here. So this may crash and burn here, but that's okay, because if it does, it'll give me an opportunity to then show how we can change things. Okay. Cool. So now, what this did is it created this little entry inside of Azure, and you're going to notice the workflow. So this workflow is my GitHub action, and so if I open this up, and I'm kind of running out of tabs, I'm like doing the John Galloway version of tabs here. Let me close some of those out here. There we go. I'm one of those where I don't like having a whole bunch of tabs up. So I'm very much I want to keep them closed, keep as few as possible. But anyway, so here's the GitHub action, and so this is actually what is making the magic happen behind the scenes. That this is what's going to actually move my items from GitHub out to Azure. This is what's going to be responsible for the deployment here. So what you're going to notice is that on push to main, it'll automatically run this. And then on pull requests to main, it'll automatically run this. And what you'll also notice is that app location, that API location, and the output location, those three options are right here. So you'll notice that if I need to change my folders, that I can do that right here. I don't need to go back over to Azure to update those folders. So if I need to do it, which there's a solid chance that I will, then I can just do that right here. What you'll also notice if I sneak back over here to my actions, you'll notice that this is now running. And so we can actually see this running behind the scenes. And if I open this up, let's see. Yeah, we can actually see it's creating a container. And then you're also going to notice eventually here, give this a second. Oh, that's too funny. Stephen points out the user icon over on the upper right shows me still with hair, which I used to have. I have alopecia, which is a little bit disappointing. So I eventually just like gave up, and this is now my hair. But yeah. Anyway, okay. So let me bring this up. You are going to notice that I'm going to get a couple little error messages here. It does tell me API can't be found. That's fine. I was expecting that. And then what we'll also notice here is that it will actually start running our npm install and everything else here. You do sadly have to ignore some of the red that comes back from this. But the big thing that I want you to notice is that it's actually running my npm run build here. So if I come back over here to my package.json file, the install process there, that deploy process, it's actually using the normal practices that we would have as developers. So it's running an npm install. So it's getting all of my dependencies from that npm install. You'll also notice that I created a build script. My build script was snowpack build. And if I come back over here There we go. Then what you're going to notice is that it's running that build script. So you can actually see snowpack build. So it is in fact running all of that for us. So all of that is pretty slick there. It's building all of that. So cool. So now it's got all of that set up, and my job is complete. The light is green, the trap is clean. All of that looks good. Let's give this a shot. Again, I'm going to give this about a 60% chance of working. It does give me the URL right here, which I'm going to talk about in a second. Let me bring that up. Shoot. Okay. Yeah, this is exactly what I was afraid of. Shoot. Dang it. What's going to be... Okay. So it's doing that. Just trying to figure out how I can tell this the right folder, and I'm not 100% certain how. Let me try this. I give this about an 8% chance of working, but I'm going to do it anyway. Let me open up my workflow and let me edit this real quick, and let me okay, and let me just commit that. And are you automatically going to run this, or do you want me to rerun it manually? You are already running it. Okay, cool. All right. So while that's running in the background, and hopefully that'll work. Again, this is the one sometimes part that you wind up just having to play with, just trying to tell Azure Static Web Apps where your files are. And so it does sadly wind up becoming a bit of trial and error. Like there's nothing that I'm not sharing here. The reason that I'm not saying necessarily a whole lot is because honestly, this is real. We're really cooking here on this show that I'm honestly not 100% certain. So we're gonna figure this out. So it might just take a little bit of playing. But while that's redeploying everything in the background here, you'll notice that it's rerunning. What you are going to notice is that it does generate this random URL. So it automatically generated kind pond and then a hex value at the end there. And that's actually a good thing, because anybody who's done Azure development with app services knows how challenging it is to try and find a name that hasn't already been taken. So instead, this just generates a name for you. And if I scroll down here, I need to zoom out, I think. There we go. What you are going to notice is if I do want to set it up with a custom domain, that I can go in and add in a custom domain if I so desire. So you're not stuck with, in this case, kind pond hex value, that you can go ahead and get your own custom domain. Okay. That pushed. Let's see if it actually worked. Again, I gave it about an 8% chance. I think I might have to go back and play around with my build script a bit. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. See, this is the part that I was a little worried about, is having to play around with my build script here. Shucks. Okay. I want... Oh, what's going to be the easiest way to get this to deploy? That's a good question. What is the answer? The answer is going to be, I think you know what I think I'm going to do? I'm just going to move index into here. I'm just going to get rid of the public folder. I'm just going to get rid of that separation, which is fine. It's not perfect, but it's fine. I'm going to get rid of the dist folder altogether. And then I'm going to update my snowpack config, and I'll just point this to there. Okay, cool. That should now that should now work. Okay. Git add dot git. Oh, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to use this as a perfect teaching opportunity. Okay. There we go. Okay. So what I did is I created an update. And what I'm doing is I'm just flattening everything. So everything's just now going to go to / here. Yeah, I'm doing this the right way now. Now I'm just going to go ahead and do this through a branch. There we go, and do it that way. You're also going to notice that on the output location, I'm getting rid of that folder. So let me explain this. Let me try and do a better job of explaining here. And I apologize if I didn't necessarily do the best of jobs before. Again, trying to set those folders can be a little bit tricky and a little bit frustrating. And what this, I think, all comes back to, what this all boils back to is whenever you're deploying to Azure, and I think anywhere in general, try to keep it as simple as possible. Try and keep your folder structure as simple as possible. So I was trying to get a little bit tricky here. I was trying to get a little bit fancy about having like 2 folders and things like that. And then like trying to bring all of that together can just cause problems. And there's probably a better way that I could have done this with snowpack, but I don't want to start down that path. So instead what I did is I just told snowpack, hey, just grab everything, just put it into the root directory. That's it. Excuse me. And then the other big thing that I did over here is now all of the code and everything else that I'm working with is just inside of that src directory. So everything that I'm doing on the client side is inside of one folder. It's all going to / it's all going to just the root directory, and we're just done. And then I don't have to worry about it, which will just make my life a little bit easier. And so then in turn, now I don't have to worry about like an output location or an app location or anything like that, that I can just keep that / and empty, and again, just be done with it. So just makes my life a little bit easier there. So I apologize for not necessarily explaining that the best possible way. But again, it's one of those things that sadly is a little bit clunky here. Okay. So now I've got that updates branch. This will give me an opportunity to show off how merges work with our Azure Static Web Apps. So you'll notice that I created a PR and I have not merged the PR. So I've just created it. And you'll notice that it's now running that action. So let's talk for just a little bit here about the way that we normally want to do deployment. That the way that we normally want to do deployment is we don't want to just push to production. That's generally speaking a bad idea. That instead what we want to do is we want to put it into a staging environment, do some last minute checks, and then go ahead and push that out into production. And so that's exactly what's going to happen here, is because of the fact that I created a PR, this is now going to set up a brand new staging environment here. And so now I could go in and do my tests. And then when I decide, okay, now I'm ready to go live, then I commit the, or I merge the PR, and then it will go ahead and push that out to live. Exactly. Friends don't let friends right-click publish. Absolutely. Absolutely. So cool. All right. This is just going to take it a second. I'm almost out of coffee. Just like perfect timing. Oh, that's so funny. Things were going so well. Where did you fail? See, we're really cooking here. Was unable to determine. Oh, why are you doing this to me? Why do you hate me? Okay, instead of going to root, you know what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to put everything over to a folder, I guess. I guess we'll try that. I guess I should take that check away from debugging that's up above my head because apparently I wasn't done debugging yet. Okay. Usually this is smoother, except of course when I'm doing it live. All right, we'll give this another second. Like I said, like, and if you're ever trying to watch me and learn how to be a better presenter, don't do what I'm doing now. Like you should never, never, never do a demo or do something that you haven't done before. Yes, I've obviously pushed out to Azure Static Web Apps before, but like trying it with that initial setup and that initial configuration, I hadn't done. So, you know, this is not the way that you should normally present, but this is again sort of what I'm going for with this type of broadcast and this particular show is, hey, this is real world. These are the things that happen. So let's try and fix it. So what I'm trying to do is I'm now just trying to tell Azure Static Web Apps, this is the folder that I want you to use. You know what just dawned on me? This is going to fail again, and I know exactly why it's going to fail again. Yeah. That's so funny. You know why this is failing? It's failing because the update that I made to the workflow file is on the branch. It's not on main. The workflow file that's running is here. So I need to update this. Okay. So now let's go back over here to my actions. And all right, let's see. Can I get you to rerun? The answer is no, apparently. You know what I can do though, is I can just close the PR and I can rerun it. Let's do that again. Pull requests, new, updates, and create, Okay. We'll give that a minute here. All right. This is just going to take it a second. So yeah, and you know, honestly, you think the checks tab would have let you rerun it? You know, it might have. Yeah, I probably could have done it that way. Where were you? Where were you 30 seconds ago, Brandon, when I needed you? This is actually the other part of the reason why I like to do this, because if you're anything like me, and I know I am, I learn things stick with me when I have to struggle with them, like when things break. So the lesson that we've now picked up here is that it is always going to run the workflow file that's on main. So it's not going to run it from the branch, which kind of makes sense. So, okay. Let's see. All right, so this is now running, build deploy, chugga. npm run build, build succeeded, manifest. It could not find the artifact folder dist. You're killing me, Smalls. All right. Let's try it this way. Gosh. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do this real quick. Let me make sure that it's actually generating a folder called dist. It's not. It's putting it into build dist. Well, for crying out loud. It's putting it into build dist. That's hilarious. Okay. Let's try this one more time. By the way that I found that is I just told it to build locally. All right, let's, where am I? I am, yeah, okay. Build dist, commit. Okay, and now let's go back to this PR. Let's go back to updates and let's, on the checks tab, he said, oh, look at that. Okay. Let's rerun that. All right. I'll give that a minute. Okay. Dev's life, indeed. All right. We'll make this happen. All right. A watch build process never works, something like that. It'll get there. At some point, I do need to get background music set up. Just so that way there's a little bit of like something other than just me talking. Because otherwise, if there's silence, then I just like feel the need to always keep talking. Although to be fair, I always feel the need to keep talking. Okay, yeah, then, all right, you're still looking for dist. That's not where I want you to look. So you are running it here. All right. Let's see, where's my workflow? Let's go over here. Okay. Let's try this again. We'll get there. This will eventually work. I'm not going to quit and go become an alpaca farmer yet. Soon. I'm getting there. Oh, that's funny. There we go. Okay. Now then, okay, let that kick off. And let's let this workflow run again. Is it going to bite me? Well, I fixed it. So I guess, you know, the thing that I learned there is actually it is running the YAML from the from my branch. It was not doing it from main. So I made a mistake earlier. It happens. I admit it. Come on. This will, hopefully, this time. API can't be found. That's fine. Just tell me you found. No API directory. That's fine. It didn't give me an error message about not finding the folder. That's a good sign. That's a good sign. Dang it. Why are you... And now it's not finding React DOM. Why? Why do you hate me? Why do you hate me? Yes, I know I have issues. You don't have to tell me I have issues. Oh. Oh, well, that's mildly annoying. Okay. Yeah. Close, Brandon. You're real close there. No, I've got it. Now I know what it is. Hold on one second. I'm gonna kick off the workflow. Give me just 2 seconds here. Git commit. Whoops. And I also need. Give me 1 second. I know that that's bold to put in a commit statement that says this will work. Oh, now you're going to give me this. I really don't care which you do. Okay, that's fine. All right. Oh. Okay. There we go. All right. Tick to continue. Thank you. That was what I needed. By the way, Brandon is amazing at Git, by the way. So, okay. Right. So, here's what did me in. Here's what I want you to notice here. So, I'm trying to figure out how to best explain this. Okay. Azure Static Web Apps wants to look inside of one directory to go find everything that it needs. That's what it wants. And so when you configure this little option right here, what you're telling it is, this is where I want you to start. Now, one of the frustrating things is it then won't look anywhere else but inside of the folder that I specify here. So what I had originally is I had build whack dist. That's what I had. Now, here's what I want you to notice. Here's what snowpack is doing. Snowpack is creating a folder called build. Okay, that's cool. And it's creating a folder called dist. Okay, that's cool. And then it's putting all of our app.js and index.html and everything else inside of dist. Okay, that's cool. Because that was what we told it to do, that inside of our snowpack config file, that was what we told it to do originally, that originally this had dist there. It was doing what we told it to do. Unfortunately, the other thing that snowpack is doing, which I missed, is it's also creating this other folder here called pkg for package. And you'll notice that inside of here, it contains, among other things, the React source files. So inside of that build folder, there's actually two folders, both of which are needed. It needs both the dist folder and that underscore snowpack folder. I was telling Azure Static Web Apps to only look at dist. So that's where things were going sideways on me. It was only looking at the dist folder. It did not recognize that snowpack folder existed. So the reason that I was getting the error message that I was getting here about it not being able to find React.js, you'll notice the full thing is that it can't find that underscore snowpack package React.js. So this is the error that I was running into, is snowpack was doing what I was telling it to do. I didn't understand what it was that snowpack was actually doing. And then in turn, I didn't quite understand what was going wrong with my configuration. So the end result here, the takeaway out of this is, A, understand whatever your packaging tool is doing, but B, keep this as simple as possible. Keep this as simple as possible. If I would have just put everything inside of one folder and just /, we would have at least found this a bit faster than we did otherwise. So now that everything's inside of just that one core folder, that one root folder, everything will now be inside of that build folder. Everything will run successfully on the deployment this time. So let me come back over here to this pull request. Let's go back over here to this. Let's go ahead and open up the results of the job that just executed. My build and deploy. Now what you're going to notice is, again, no error message on not being able to find a folder. And if I open the site, there is everything finally deployed out. So the TLDR of all of this, if I can actually TLDR this at this point, is keep your deployment as simple as possible. And I think that that's a global truth, but that's certainly wound up being true here. That what I did in the end is I just got everything down to one folder and then just told Azure Static Web Apps, look at this one folder, and then that was it. So now this is properly deployed out. It's done. All right. The other real quick thing that I want to highlight right up top here is you'll notice the URL. You'll notice that little -2 that's there. That's that staging environment that it created because of the fact that I've got this on a PR. If I merge the PR, it will now go out to production. So let me go ahead and merge that, confirm the merge, and then in a couple of moments, that little 404 will eventually be replaced by the real site. So let me paste that URL in. Let me paste in the GitHub repository here. So that way you've got both of those. I hope I didn't lose everybody as I was fighting through all of that. I do apologize, but again, we're really cooking here. We're doing this for real. And yeah, the fact that it creates an auto PR number environment is super slick, isn't that? It's so cool. Like again, once you get past that initial setup, which partly I did to myself. I did part of that to myself. I will openly admit. But once you get past that, it's super slick. And honestly, even that deployment, usually it's not that difficult. I made that more difficult on myself than it needed to be. Usually it's not that difficult. But yeah. So now it's still doing its thing. Actions, yeah, it's still doing its thing, and eventually that will become live. So yeah, it's pretty cool. I also love the fact that it's a workflow file and it's integrated in with GitHub. So I really do appreciate that as well. So cool. All right. So now all of my tasks up above are complete. Hopefully this will finish up in just a second here. So yeah, thanks for tuning in to Code and Coffee. This is basically what we wind up doing each week. Usually the battles with technology are not as long, but this is basically it, that we go in and we explore things. And so what I really want to try and do next week is to gussy up the UI some. I think I'm going to go in and try Tailwind, which I haven't done before. I actually had a great conversation last night with Jen Looper about that. So I'm excited to go in and try Tailwind, and I'll add that in, and I'll probably go in and start incorporating some level of data, although we'll have to see how long getting Tailwind and everything else set up winds up taking us. So yeah, so come on. It's going to take it yet another minute here. It's going to take just long enough to make me nervous. I want, oops, where do I want to go? There we go. Okay. Yeah. Took just long enough to get to make me nervous. So, yep. So now it's all deployed out, all looking real good. And there it is. Cool. All right. So yeah, so that is Code and Coffee. Thanks so much to everybody for tuning in, for sticking around for an extra 25 minutes. I do appreciate that. Hopefully you picked up something about React. Hopefully you picked up something about Azure Static Web Apps. Hopefully you picked up something about debugging. And I hope to see all of you next week. Same time, same place, and we'll keep building on this project. So thanks again for tuning in. Have fun, everybody. Bye.